Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by bigfouraccountingfirms.com. If you enjoy our show, don't forget to help us out by subscribing to this podcast, sharing it with a friend, and providing us with a review on iTunes. Check out the show notes below for the link. Thanks, and enjoy the show.
Today we are going to be talking about KPMG's 2017 revenue release. As I stated in the previous podcast, we knew that this day would come, that KPMG's revenue numbers would be here very soon, and they have arrived. And they aren't the best numbers. Let's go over the highlights though. KPMG announced revenues of $26.4 billion for the fiscal year ended 2017. For KPMG, that day is September 30th every year. It's the end of September every year. KPMG's number of employees reached almost 200,000 in 2017. And as you know, all the other big four firms are far beyond 200,000 employees by now, but KPMG being the smallest big four accounting firm, they're still way behind. And how much growth was this? This represented 4.8% growth in local currency terms, which is how the big four like to release their revenues. But if you look in actual dollar revenue growth, it's only 3.9% growth. So very, very low. It's very, very bad year for KPMG all around. I mean, you have to think of it that they're the smallest big four accounting firm out there, so they should be able to grow the most because you're starting off of a smaller number. And another highlight that KPMG was pointing out in this report was that they hired 49% females of their new hire class. As you know, they've all been releasing these numbers of diversity and how they've been hiring, and especially with all the gender issues out there in society as it stands right now, all the big four are going to be talking about the percentage of females they have and percentage of females that they're hiring as starting classes. But with that, let's go further into the details of KPMG's revenue numbers. So again, they announced $26.4 billion for the fiscal year ended 2017. And this compares to $25.42 billion in 2016. And that's an increase of $1 billion year over year. And like we said before, in actual dollar growth, that's 3.9%. As you know, on this podcast, we tried to project their revenue earlier in the year. And in part of that projection, we tried to project PwC's revenue as well. We nailed PwC's projection, but we didn't nail KPMG's. For KPMG, we're estimating about $26.9 billion, but it ended up being 26.4. So we were off by 500 million. We didn't estimate this bad of growth for KPMG. And now let's look at the growth percentages compared to the other big four. So like we said before, KPMG had growth of 4.8% in local currency terms. E&Y had growth of 6.5%. PwC had growth of 7.8%, and Deloitte had growth of 7.1%. So all the other big four were 6% or higher, and KPMG's lagging way behind at 4.8%. And if you look at the real growth rates, it's 3.9% for KPMG, 6% for E&Y, 6.5% for PwC, and 5.15% for Deloitte. So even from that metric, they're way behind everybody. And now we'll look at KPMG's revenue by region. They made $10.48 billion in the Americas region, and that only grew about 4.6%, which is not that good because, as you can tell, the Americas region is probably the United States, and the economy's been doing pretty well, so to only have 4.6 isn't that good. And the next region we'll talk about is Asia. In Asia, they did experience some really good growth. It's about 9% growth from 4 billion to 4.4 billion. And the last region is the Europe Middle East region, and here they experienced only 1% growth from 11.3 billion to 11.5 billion. This is where the majority of KPMG's revenue comes from. So it's a little bit crazy to think that they only had 1% growth here. And some of the reasons I'm thinking about are the KPMG South Africa scandal. They lost tons of clients in KPMG South Africa, which is in the Africa region. So that could be huge implications because that could have been hundreds of millions of dollars. And what that is, that's a difference of, 2%, 3% in these numbers. But people are also saying this KPMG South Africa scandal had impacts beyond Africa. Like in Europe, there was clients that were turning down KPMG because of this scandal and the reputation hit that it took. But I think there's more to it than just KPMG South Africa. I think there's a number of things. Honestly, I think it's probably leadership too, because they had a leadership change this year. So I don't know if that affected it, but whatever's going on, leadership is not really moving the business forward. And it's not even one specific region, because it looks like it's happening in Americas and Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So it seems like across the board, KPMG is being really impacted here. I wanted to take a small break to let you know that our Big Four accounting firms interview course has been released. And this is a great course. It has over an hour of information in there with professionally designed slides. And this gives you everything you need to know to get the job that you want within the Big Four. It tells you about the people that you're going to be interviewing with, why they joined the Big Four, what their job entails. It goes over interview questions that you're likely to face, along with research that's already been completed for you. In addition, you also get 100 interview questions in a PDF format, and you also get a free resume template. So I encourage you to check that out. The link will be in the show notes, and also go to our website, big4accountingfirms.com, and there will be links to this course on there as well. And with that, I'll let you get back to the show. If you take a look at practice, and we start with audit, the audit practice grew at 2.7% from $10.12 billion to $10.39 billion in 2017. And again, this is really slow growth here, but we've seen this in all the other Big Four firms where their audit practices are really slowing down and, not growing as big as tax and advisory. And with that, let's talk about tax. Tax grew from $5.56 billion to $5.8 billion, and that's about 5% growth. So that's not too bad. That's pretty good. And then KPMG's advisory practice grew 4.5% from $9.74 billion to $10.18 billion. And that's okay growth, but all the other firms' advisory practices are above 5%, and their advisory practices are growing rapidly. Where here at KPMG, we don't see that. So that's not a good sign for KPMG. Seems like all of their practices are doing just about okay. And with the economy moving pretty well right now, it's not a good sign that KPMG isn't doing well. The last thing I'll go over here as far as this press release is the number of employees, because another important part of every Big Four revenue release is the detail they release about their employees. And this is because the Big Four make their money off of billing employees' times. So it's important to understand how their employee growth correlates to their revenue growth. And it's usually 1 for 1. It's usually the revenue growth is in line with the employee growth. And so KPMG's number of employees grew to 197,263 employees in 2017 from 188,982 in 2016. And that represents a growth of 4.4%. So that explains a lot in terms of KPMG's 2017 revenue numbers. No wonder they don't have a lot of revenue growth. Their people growth was slow as well. You can't grow a business that's built off of billing out people's time if you don't hire more people every year. So it seems like KPMG didn't hire enough employees. Either that or they lost a lot of employees. And that's one thing I was sifting through this press release I couldn't really find. You couldn't find how many people KPMG hired this year, which is normally the Big Four are really proud of that number. And they know there's turnover, but they're really proud of that number. But I think KPMG is keeping that number close to the vest because I think they lost a lot of employees this year. Either that or they just weren't hiring the right amount of people. So it'd be interesting to see that number. And the number of partners at KPMG grew to 10,000, up from 9,800. And the number of professionals grew to 153,000 in 2017 as opposed to 147,000 in 2016. And the professional and support staff at KPMG grew to 33,600, up from 32,000 in 2016. And some other important news that came out of this press release is that KPMG spoke about their new CEO, Bill Thomas. He's speaking very positively. Everything in the press release was positive about new technologies like KPMG Clara, which we've spoken about before on this podcast, their partnership with Microsoft, and how they're developing trust in the marketplace. And usually if the numbers aren't good, then you'll see the Big Four stuff that reports with all this other information about changes in leadership, changes in technology, investing in technology. And they also have a transparency report, which is supposed to give insight into their business. But that report is all about developing trust in the marketplace. And it's really hard for people to believe in that when you have such a huge scandal in South Africa that is rippling across the business and rippling across the world as far as impacting your business. So in conclusion, it was a bad year for KPMG. As the smallest Big Four firm, they can't afford to have such low growth. And it should be easier for them to have growth since they are working off a smaller number than all the other big four. But that doesn't seem to be the case with KPMG. They seem to be lagging farther and farther behind the other big four. And it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to catch up anytime soon. They can't even get over that $30 billion mark that all the other firms have gotten to, and now Deloitte is pushing on $40 billion. The only way they're going to get out of this is if they make a huge investment and make a huge acquisition. And I'm not talking about an acquisition of an accounting firm. I'm talking about an acquisition of an advisory practice or a technology firm or a huge marketing division. They need to go into another professional service that's going to put them leaps and bounds in front of the other big four. And we all know that this is possible because of technology. Technology can disrupt. So if KPMG invests in the significant technology, maybe they can make the space up between them and the other big four.
We appreciate your help in growing this podcast so we can continue to bring you the best Big Four content possible. You could help us out by providing a review on iTunes, sending us an email with your comments, and don't forget to share with your friends. There's a link below in the show notes. That's our show for today. Thanks for listening and have a great day.